When they crossed the bridge just outside the village, snow began to fall. At first, a few flakes, and then the white stuff filled the whole sky. When they passed through another small village of 20 houses or so, snow fell thick and heavy. It did not make the going any harder, however. On the contrary, the snow blanketed them with a soft, downy feeling. It snowed on their heads and hair, turning them into old men. They decided to take a rest in front of a little pavilion, memorial for a country magistrate of old. There, the road forked into two. A tin signboard standing by the road indicated distances, but the rust and the paint peeling off made them hard to decipher. Zhang and Yongdao sat down in front of the pavilion and started smoking. "Pretty, aren't they? The snowflakes," said Zhang, looking up at the sky. "The harvest will be good next year. When you look at it, you feel as if there is nothing to worry about in the whole world," said Yongdao. "Yeah, it makes me feel good too," said Zhang. "But if it keeps on snowing like this, we will have a difficult time on the road." "Let's go just as far as we feel like going," proposed Yongdao. "We can continue tomorrow. What's the hurry? Look, there's somebody coming this way." An aged-looking man in a traditional Korean man's white overcoat with a felt hat on his head was walking in their direction, taking care that he should not slip on the snow-covered road. The snow had turned into ice on the brim and the fold of his hat. "Excuse me, sir," Zhang said to the old man, bowing low. "Could you tell me which road we should take to Wolchul?" "Certainly. This road goes to Wolchul," answered the old man, pointing out the road. "But it won't be easy. There is a steep mountain path you will have to cross. In this snow, I don't think any buses will be going that way." "Where does the other road lead to?" asked Zhang. "Not to Wolchul," answered the old man. "After you pass 3 villages, you'll get to Gamchan." "Does the train go there?" Yongdao asked this time. "Yes, it does," said the old man. "Thank you. Let's go," Zhang said. The old man lifted his snow-covered hat and took to the upper road, and soon turned toward the direction of the village. Yongdao cut off a piece of faded straw rope hanging from the roof and handed half of it to Zhang, saying, "Tie it around your feet." "Will it be strong enough?" Zhang voiced his doubt. They tied the rope over their shoes. Now the 2 men could walk with the shorter treads. They turned into the lower road. It soon became narrower, but was wide enough to let an ox cart pass. A stream with gravel borders ran by the road. There was a thin sheet of snow on the stream. The 2 men kept on walking, leaving behind their footprints in the snow. They entered the village and passed through the village children and dogs, which were scampering about in the snow-covered fields. The frost was thick on the windows of the village shops. People were talking behind the windows. They passed another village, and the snow began to let up. At a little roadside store, they bought a bottle of white rice wine and drank it. They began to feel warmer. Then they walked through a pine forest. The trees let lumps of snow fall with a thud from time to time. Yongdao, who had been falling behind, called out, "Look!" "What?" Zhang looked back. "Look under the pine tree over there." Where Yongdao was pointing, there sat a woman squatting on the ground with her back turned to them. From the way she was squatting, holding up the tails of her red coat with her hands, she must have been urinating. While they were looking, she stood up, exposing her wide buttocks before she pulled up her underwear. Then she looked around and exclaimed, "Oh my!" She let her coat down and picked up her bundle, lying where she had been squatting. "What are you looking at, you bastards?" she shouted. Yongdao sniggered. Zhang whispered under his breath, "She has double eyelid on one eye." "Yeah, I had a funny hunch that we would see her." The woman was obviously afraid of something and would not come near them. "So, it is you," said Yongdao loudly. "Miss Becqua running away from Chan-sem." "What's it to you?" She snapped back. "I'm walking on my own feet." Your mistress asked us to catch you and bring you back to her, said Young Dao. The woman walked towards them with defiance and said, All right, catch me. Bekwa looked flushed, even without her makeup from the long walk in the cold. Not that we want to do it, placated Zhang. Where are you headed for? My friend here was only joking. The woman was very upset, less because she had been caught in the act of urinating than because Young Dao's manner of speech was impudent. She said angrily, Who do you think you are, trying to catch somebody? You're only good-for-nothing bums. Yeah, we are bums. So are you. We want to take you to Chansem and make some money for travel. Young Dao walked up to the woman, trying to show her that he was not merely joking. Suddenly, Bekwa swung around fast and pushed off Young Dao's chest with all her strength. Before he realized it, Young Dao was knocked down onto the snow. Bekwa stared down at him with one hand around her bundle and the other at her waist akimbo. What do you want, you son of a bitch? She shouted. I have been through the yellow house at Incheon, the gravel yard at Daegu, the college at Pohang, and the 7th district at Incheon, and that is not for nothing. I was just taking some rest in that country house. I have let more than a military division of men pass over my belly. If you stayed nice and quiet, I could give you a piece in some quiet corner. If you think that you can sell me off to that vessel for some snotty pay, however, we'll die together, you and me, before you do that. Sitting on the ground, with his mouth open, Young Dao listened to her harangue. Zhang looked into the pine trees, trying hard to keep down his laughter that was about to burst out. Young Dao stood up shamefacedly and dusted off the snow from his trousers. We are men of honor, he said. We don't do mean things. The three started walking together on the snow-covered road. As she went along with the men, Bekwa said, If you are a man of principle, as you say, don't forget your manners when speaking to me. Young Dao merely clicked his tongue, but Zhang politely asked, Where are you headed for? For home, she said gruffly. Where is your home? South. It's been 3 years since I left home. This girl just speaks so easy, as if one could just get up and go home, just like that. At Young Dao's sarcastic remark, Bekwa did not show the same kind of hostility she had shown before. She smoothed the stray hair back from her temples and looked at Young Dao with an expression of fatigue. You're right, said Bekwa in a calm voice. We think every night that we will go home first thing in the morning, but that's only what we think at night. Years go by. There are times we really make up our minds and head home. Twice I almost made my way home. Once I looked at the village elders from afar. People call me Bekwa, but of course that's not my real name. I never tell my real name to anybody. They said at the Seoul restaurant that they were going to Wall Chul to catch you at the station. Zhang informed her. Well, this isn't the first time, said Bekwa. I knew that they would go there. That's why I took the road to Gamcheon and came this way. They're just country hicks. If they were smart, they would have sent the guys on all the roads. But I have done nothing that would hurt anybody. My debt? It is something extra they like to suck out of me after all the blood-sucking they have already done. I'm sick and tired of booze and nights. I don't want any more of that. No thanks. My bottom just dropped out of my body. I wish I could become a Buddhist nun, to get up at dawn and take a cold shower and pray for 100 days. Then I'll be Bekwa no more. Damn it. They continued walking. Bekwa became more and more talkative. When she fell behind, she talked from behind. She talked about the times when she enjoyed her popularity in the cities, but her conclusion was that everything was fraudulent, except money. In her world of Burmese, she jabbed her bundle with her forefinger. What do you have in your bundle? Bekwa asked the man. Don't tell me, I know. Hammers and saws. What do I have in my bundle? A couple of old sleeves, panties, lipsticks, powder, and whatnot. If you look at these things, you'd know how I am doing. Washed out, faded, threadbare, worn out like my old sleep. Baekwa was only 22, but acted as if she was over 30. After leaving home at 18, she had known the bitter taste of life. Now she was a seasoned prostitute. She wore an old coat frayed at the elbows, a pair of baggy pants, and high-heeled shoes as shapeless as swollen squids. The two men had to give her support when they came upon steep slopes, lest she should slip. "You could have easily bought yourself a pair of rubber shoes," complained Youngdao. "You are slowing us down." "If that's the way you feel," she retorted, "why don't you guys go ahead? Where do I get the money to buy the rubber shoes with?" "Didn't we tell you that we are men of honor?" said Youngdao defensively. "We can't leave a woman alone in the mountains. So, you haven't got any money, huh?" Baekwa chuckled. "What does a woman need if only she has a pussy?" "The way you think, it's no wonder that you have never settled down," jeered Youngdao. "Look here," Baekwa retorted. "What do you think you are yourself? How can a girl like me be a housewife when you handsome guys can't earn enough to feed yourself, let alone a family?" Youngdao was no match for the barrage of Baekwa's sharp answers. Then they came into the last village before the railway station at Gamcheon. There were wild ducks on the frozen river, tottering with short quick steps or circling around. As the three walked into the village, everything was quiet. There was the stinging smell of burning pine wood from the chimneys encircling fences. The blurred murmur of the villagers talking behind the paper windows vaguely spilled over into the streets. "I feel shaky," confessed Youngdao, "because I haven't eaten anything yet. By the time we get to Gamcheon, it will be night. Let's get something to eat here." "This place is too small," objected Zhang. "There doesn't seem to be any eating places or stores here." "We could always drive into a house and explain our situation," suggested Youngdao. Baekwa had her hands in the pockets of her coat. She found it difficult to walk on the slippery road. "I'm frozen stiff," she said weakly. "I would like to warm my feet a little bit, even if we don't have anything to eat." But Zhang insisted on keeping on the road. "It's better to go on. If we stop here, it means losing one whole night. There are eating places in Gamcheon. And the train, don't forget that." At Zhang's urging, they kept on walking past the village. While the ducks were the light on the snowy fields to flare up again, they found a deserted farmhouse by the roadside. One corner of the roof had caved in, leaving a gaping hole there, and the dirt wall around the yard was falling into ruins. The farmer and his family must have departed for some other place. Youngdao, who had first looked into the house, said, "Let's go in. We could try out our shoes here." Baekwa limped into the snow-covered yard, accompanied by the two men. The floors in the inner and the outer rooms had collapsed, but the earth floor between the two rooms was still keeping its stamped hardness. It promised to be a place of some comfort and rest. Zhang walked in last and stood about under the eaves. Youngdao gathered twigs sticking out from under the mud walls, broken doors, shelves, anything that could be burned. They piled the wood in the middle of the earth floor and lit it. The wood that had long dried in the farmhouse blazed up in orange flames. As the fire and smoke grew, Zhang, who had been keeping back a little, moved closer, trying to keep his wet shoes and trousers steadily in front of the fire. He gently closed his eyes. The fire created for them an illusion of having returned home from a long journey. They grew drowsy. Baekwa looked on while Youngdao broke twigs over his legs and fed them into the fire, with eyes made teary because of the smoke. "You're a good man," she said. "I thought you were a mean ratneck." Why this sudden sweet talk? Young Dao joked. Don't be nice now and then put me down. Honest, she protested. I like the way you made the fire. Zhang chuckled and said to Young Dao, You idiot, can't you see that she fancied you? Don't make fun of me, said Young Dao. Do you think that I've never been in love? You play all the tricks you know, but women barely open up. When the morning comes, they don't care a bit. Oh, is that so? Broke in Bekwa. Perhaps you've known only the wrong kinds, fly-by-night loves. They say that in this whoring world, everything is money, but once they really fall in love, they really love a formidable love. When I first entered this world, I too had had a life and death love. The snow melting on the roof fell onto the yard and made a soft dull thud. Bekwa poked the fire with a stick and fell into deep thought. Her face, lit by the fire, looked pretty. How many men have I loved like that? She continued. 8. 8 altogether. Just like the way it is in your world, said the young Dao scornfully. Listen, all 8 of them were like one man to me. Pekwa's memory ran back to her life at the girl house. She used to sit at the tip of the veranda and look toward the military prison with the watchtowers at the 4 corners of the barbed wire fence. On the hill, there was a whitewashed crescent Quonset hut and several barracks. There were cosmos flowers all around. It was hard to believe that prisoners were actually inside, kneeling all day long behind the iron bars. Once a day, the prisoners with closely shaven heads and red-striped fatigues marched out of the barracks in regular military formation as the order was given in a long, sharp voice. They washed their faces and defecated, standing or sitting, all in single file. Sometimes they came down to the village by 5s or 6s, led by the armed military police to work around the village. When they did, they marched in orderly columns, keeping their heads down with oversized baskets slung over their shoulders. It all began when I was unlucky enough to run into a man and be sold to a saloon, Bekwa reminisced. When I first walked in there, I didn't care what became of me. I wasn't afraid of anything. I was young, but I knew already how tough life could be. One day, 30 prisoners came to the village to work on the dike. They were a quiet sort, having come almost to the end of their prison terms. To these prisoners, the villagers lowered their guard a little. Once the prisoners were out in the village, what they wanted most was cigarettes. Once I bought 2 packs of cigarettes and quietly gave them to a pale-looking prisoner. Then, when they worked in the village, I would supply them regularly with the cigarettes through the pale-faced soldier. It then developed that I went to see him at the prison with a present of food. After 2 months, he got out of prison and came to see me. He had the insignia of a private on his fatigues. We spent the night together, and he went away to his new post. I worked for 8 soldiers like that, Bekwa continued. After a month or 2, they came out and spent the night with me and went away. Because of these things, Bekwa could not save enough money at the girl house to buy herself even a new dress. Nevertheless, that was the time when she felt most happy and at peace. On the morning a new soldier departed for a remote post, she would stand and wait until his bus disappeared into the dust on the road. Ever since the girl house, Bekwa made it a rule to stay near military posts when she had to move about from place to place. She ended her story. It was still early in the evening, but because of the overcast, sky felt like night already. The snow looked even whiter. Everything was completely quiet except the crackling of the fire. It's not only prison life that is hard, Zhang added his observation. Life is a sea of suffering, as they say. He put on his jacket he had been drying over the fire. Let's be on our way before it gets too dark, he said. They all stood up and went out to carry in snow by the handfuls to smother the fire that was still burning vigorously. The scenery was gradually fading into darkness. Birds were flocking into the woods, homing to their nests there. "What are your plans after you get home?" Yongdal asked Baekwa. She merely laughed and did not answer. Zhang sat in her place. "She will get married." "No, I'm not going to be married," retorted Baekwa. "No, sir. I will merely stay at home and help with the fields. Besides, I have my brothers to take care of." As darkness set in, the three travelers fell into silence. Snow was everywhere, and it was difficult to know where the road lay. Baekwa, who had fallen behind the others, stumbled into a ditch. She fell and groaned, not moving. She might have sprained her ankle. Yongdal walked back and, over her protest, took her on his back. Baekwa, yielding to Yongdal's insistence, said, "Heavy, huh?" Yongdal did not answer, but he thought that she was as light as a child. Far from feeling weighed down with a burden, he felt more light-footed. Maybe she wasn't well. As Yongdal thought about it, he remembered Okja at Daejeon, and sadness came upon his heart. "You have broad shoulders," complimented Baekwa. "You could easily carry 3 persons at a time." "It's because you are so underrated," said Yongdal. It was around 7 o'clock when they arrived at Gamcheon. It must have been the market day. One could still feel the bustle even after the market was closed. Aromas of fried fish, roasted meat, and tripe soup were floating in the air. Yongdal now walked along with Baekwa, supporting her from the side. Every step she took made her groan from pain. "What line are you taking?" Zhang asked Baekwa. "The Jeolla line." "I'm taking the Honam line," explained Zhang. "Do you have enough money for the fare?" "I could ask soldiers on the military train to give me a free ride," answered Baekwa. At a store in the marketplace, they bought several rice cakes and shared them. They were still warm from the steam cooker. Baekwa offered half of her share to Yongdal, saying, "You better take it. You need that for having carried me on your back." On the way to the railway station, Baekwa turned again to Yongdal and suggested, "If you don't have any particular place you are going to, why don't you come along with me to my village? I can get you work easy enough." "Sampo is where I'm going, but there's no reason why you can't go with her," said Zhang to Yongdal. Yongdal looked down at the tips of his clay-covered shoes and didn't say anything. When they were inside the station, Zhang took Yongdal aside and asked, "Do you have the fare?" "Just enough," answered Yongdal. "I have with me a little that I have been setting aside for emergencies. About 1,000 won." "Where do you want to go?" asked Zhang. "Wherever there is work." Arrivals and departures were being announced through the speakers. Zhang looked at Baekwa seated tiredly on a wooden bench in the waiting room and then said to Yongdal, "Why don't you go with her? She looks like a good girl." "I think so too," agreed Yongdal. "You never know," continued Zhang. "If things go well, you may be settling down with her. This seems like a good chance for trying." Yongdal looked outside uncertainly. Baekwa stared with an anxious look at the 2 men talking under their breath. "I don't have anything to settle down with," said Yongdal after a moment. "Then, do you still want to come to Sampo with me?" "In any case," said Yongdal, producing out of the back pocket of his pants 2 500 bills rolled up tight. "Let's send her on." Yongdal bought a ticket, 2 rolls of bread, and a hard-boiled egg, and walked up to Baekwa. "We'll take a later train, so goodbye now." Baekwa took what Yongdal gave her. Tearing up, she stuttered, Are you not going, either of you?" "We are going to Sampo. That is my hometown," answered Zhang on behalf of them both. People were going out to the ticket gate. Bae-kwa got up with a bundle under her arm. "I won't forget your kindness," she said, and walked towards the gate. But then she turned around and came back, tears still in her eyes. She was smiling. "My real name is," she said to the two men standing, "not Bae-kwa, but Jam-ne. Yi Jam-le. I wanted to tell you that." She left for the ticket gate once again, and shortly thereafter the train left the station. The two men fell asleep on the bench. When they woke up again, about an hour later, it was snowing outside. Their train was late. All the benches in the waiting room were filled with people from the area. They were all waiting for the night trains. The two men lit cigarettes and sat smoking. A short sleep after a long walk made them feel even more exhausted. "How many days would it last?" said Yongdal as if to himself. "What do you mean?" Jiang sat up. Her determination to stay and work on the farm. Those kids, they can't stand the farm more than 3 days. "Depends on what kind of person she is. But you are right. People are becoming funny these days." An old man who had been sitting next to them, looking them over along with their bundles, spoke to them. "Where are you headed?" "Home," said Jiang. "Where is that?" asked the old man. "Sampo. Have you ever heard of it?" "Sure," said the old man. "My son works there. He's a bulldozer operator." "At Sampo? A bulldozer operator?" said Jiang incredulously. "There can't be any big-time construction work there. Some fishing and potato farming. That's all they have." "Oh?" the old man exclaimed. "How long have you been away?" 10 years, answered Jiang. The old man nodded his head. "So, you don't know anything. Sampo is now part of the mainland. They built a dike into the sea, and along the dike, trucks are carrying tons and tons of rocks and gravel and dumping them into the sea." "Why?" asked Jiang. "Who knows? They say they're going to build some tourist hotels. Who'd know the racket behind all that?" "I suppose the village hasn't changed though," said Jiang hopefully. "What do you mean? The whole place is full of construction workers. They even have a marketplace there." "Then there is now no ferry boat to Sampo?" "What is the use of any boat?" the old man continued to tell him. "There's a road right over the sea. The problem is people. So many people crowded into one small place. Crowds do away with the old ways of heaven." It was a decision made with a strong determination, Jiang going back home. But the old man's story was something entirely unexpected. He hadn't taken into account the change occurring in his own hometown. Yongdal had been listening in silence. Then he said, "Well, that's all the better. We will get work at the construction sites." As Yongdal was talking, the train came in. Jiang did not feel like going. He had just lost his heart's home. Now he was in the same situation as Yongdal. The train pulled out into the dark plain where snow was falling.